Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of My Future Energy Career. My name is Jalen, and I am here today with our STEM hero, Daric Adair. Welcome, Daric.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about STEM as a career, engineering as a career.
Yeah, so glad to have you too. So, Daric is a energy analyst at Henderson Engineers, and yeah, we're so glad to have you here. And without further ado, I will pass it off to Daric, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do as a career.
My name's Derek. I am an engineer and a building analyst at Henderson. What that means is we get to look at buildings and figure out how they operate. What kind of lights do we have? How hot or cool in the building is it? And we get to look at how those buildings use energy. And this can be a huge variety of buildings, whether that's stores and retail, or whether it's your school, or even office buildings. And so we can look at a huge different number of buildings to compare their usage, compare their and how they operate. I'm a mechanical engineer by education and training. And in my role, we're really trying to look at building energy use and its sustainability impact, and as well as its impact on its comfort, and understanding how comfortable people are if they're hot, or if they're cold, or if it's too bright, or even too dark. So we try to balance all of those factors in my role.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Sounds very interesting. Moving on, we'll go into where you're from.
I actually am an Oklahoma native, and that's shown by the green stars. I actually grew up in eastern Oklahoma and in the Tulsa area. And my parents were both teachers. My dad was a coach, and that's why we moved around a few different times just to different teaching and coaching jobs. One of the things for me that was really big as a kid was there were family friends of ours who were engineers. I know a close buddy of mine, his dad was an engineer. There were a few guys who lived in the neighborhood who were different kinds of engineers that I got to interact with. And I was like, oh, that's what, I didn't necessarily know exactly what they did, but I was like, I know what those, I aspire to be like those guys. And I was active as a kid. I was in sports. I was in Boy Scouts. I was in band. So it was busy. It was really pretty busy in my early years. I then went to college at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater and spent time there. And then I now currently live in Kansas City, in Olathe, just a little town outside of Kansas City, not terribly little, but suburb. And I've got family that I go visit pretty often in Oklahoma City. So pretty middle of the country for me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing again. Moving on, we'll go into some of your hobbies and interests.
Yeah, I really like building things. I mean, that started, like Jalen and I talked, I had Legos as a kid. I've now moved into more of woodworking. The picture on the right there, I got an angle grinder, cutting some metal. But that's where usually like building stuff, fixing things. Sometimes it's stuff around the house. Sometimes it's just different tools or toys, or if a neighbor needs help, something like that. So I really enjoy building stuff. I get to use my hands and make something, out of a raw product, and generate something. I also really like running and being outdoors. That's something that, try to get up and run, try to stay active, take care of myself, but also being outside, just getting some fresh air, and really trying to take those breaks and connect. One other outlet that I really enjoy is music. As I said, I was in band, but I listen to a whole wide different variety of music, especially when I'm working, either working, building stuff, or working for work. Whether it's rock music or classic rock, classical, jazz. It's a whole different range of music that I listen to and just enjoy.
Yeah, music is definitely a great outlet for sure. I would
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, thank you for sharing. But next we'll move on to your educational pathway.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in Oklahoma, went to high school there. I attended Oklahoma State University and finished my undergrad degrees in mechanical and aerospace engineering. And then I switched over to industrial engineering for grad school. That's where OSU had their more energy focused group, energy focused teams. And so that's where I was able to pursue the energy side of it while continuing my education. And as well as doing some job shadowing, I was part of a group at OSU that also went out and did audits and tours of facilities to look at their operations and analyze it and look at options to help them operate better and be involved with that. As I alluded to earlier, there were also a lot of intro to engineering programs or STEM exposure type programs where there were tours, or some of it was through Boy Scouts, but some of it was just, the local engineering groups would host these events, an engineering day. And so I was able to get exposure to that, as well as in my normal classrooms of math and science, physics, chemistry, those type of classes. And there were a few examples where there were more free form or more STEM type activities to really embrace that side and take on those problems that aren't, just learning from a textbook, but saying, hey, here's these limited resources. How might you achieve this goal? Like a toothpick bridge, or looking at straw towers, different things like that, that were in an education setting, but not necessarily, your math and science typical classes.
Thank you for sharing that. But moving on, we'll move on to some challenges you had to face and to get here, what you had to learn.
Yeah, there definitely some challenges along the way. One that I think a lot of students would agree with is school is hard, but you can also do it. And that's where you've got to continually meet that struggle and make that effort and put that yourself forward to say, hey, I can do this. I can learn this. Hey, I'm figuring this out. And knowing that each of those blocks builds upon itself. Part also was that figuring out what I wanted to do. As I alluded to, I didn't really know that my job was out there. One thing that really helped with that is just staying a student, and that isn't student as in like always in a classroom, but student as in looking for those opportunities to learn, whether it's STEM outreach programs, or whether it's an engineering day, or different groups that you could go and be involved with to see what kind of tours or exposures you might be able to get, and ask questions. It's one of those to pay attention to what they're saying, but also be able to ask good questions like, "Hey, you said this. Does this mean this other thing?" And get more information that you're interested in, but also understand the processes that they're working on.
Yeah, awesome. Some great advice. And next, we'll go into some advice you can offer us.
Yeah, as we stated, one of those things that was hard for me was to figure out what I wanted to do. And one of the things that really helped me was read. There are a tremendous number of resources out there now, both online. You can subscribe to a number of free publications online. There are probably always also message boards or different forums where you can go and learn and read about different jobs, different careers, different things that people are doing in the industry, and really get those interests. Look at a broad base of what's out there, and start to identify, maybe it's one of those that you're really interested in cars, and you want to work on car design. There's a ton of different car magazines that talk about cars and modifications to cars, engines, all that. Maybe it's aerospace. There are a number of different programs out there for that. And so there's a ton of different resources that you can go and read and be exposed to, and start learning about, saying, wait, I may not fully understand what I'm reading yet, but this sounds interesting. I'm going to go learn more about this topic, about this engine, or about this new technology that's coming out. And so that's reading is the best thing you can do to get yourself exposed to that. Along with that, you can set goals. And that's one of those where you got to set the goal and then look at the steps you need to achieve that goal. It's like, hey, I'm really interested in knowing more about, let's say it's programming. And you could set a goal to say, I want to learn about computer programming, and I want to, find some online resources, and maybe you can complete an online course or a programming class through that. And so you can set those steps and those goals to figure out the next thing and the next thing, and those steps to meet those goals. Those two bullets kind of tie together. Learning and news resources are great to find your new interests, to find what interests you and what you can learn more about. It's one of those where there's a diverse number of applications now, where there are specialties and there are options within careers that you may not even know exist. I know I was in that boat where I didn't fully know what I wanted to do, but I knew I was really interested in buildings and construction. And I've been able to get involved in this industry in a way I didn't even fathom previously. And last is balance is really, really key. And this is hard because there's so many different things going on. There's your friends and your family, there's education, and you've got to remember to have fun as well in there. And it's all a balance. We can't focus only on having fun. You've got to worry about education and finding those interests. And it doesn't have to be a formal education. It can be reading about, those different interests you found on the internet or different resources to learn about. And so it's a balance of finding out those different factors and figuring out what else you can be interested in.
Yeah, moving on to our last section, just a few questions to wrap up our interview.
Sure.
So first off, I just wanted to ask, I'm just wondering, you said that family friends who were engineers were a big inspiration to you as a kid. What exactly did you see that caused that spark and that inspiration for engineering?
Thinking of a couple of the engineers that I knew as a kid, and they were obviously in their professional career, it seemed like they liked to solve problems. They they got to ask questions. One thing that a lot of folks may not realize is that American Airlines has huge presence in Tulsa as well as surrounding area, and so there were a few different engineers I knew from that who got to work on some cool stuff. You know, they got to work on airplanes, they got to work on engines, they got to work on big things. And so it's just like, wow, that's really neat. I want to go work on that stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing again. And
Yeah.
that kind of segues into my last question. And it sounds like you were very involved with engineering outside of the classroom. And I just wanted to ask you, for kids out there who are looking to get involved with stuff outside the classroom,
Yeah.
how valuable were those experiences to you? And can you recall any in particular that really made an impact on you?
Yeah, they can be very impactful because in a lot of cases, what those tours can show you is exposure to careers or ideas that you don't even know exist that are out there. I can definitely say I didn't know that my job was out there when I was going through all of those programs, and being exposed to those different sides kind of showed the multitude of opportunities that were out there for what I wanted to be interested in, what I could specialize in, and just what made sense to pursue and be curious about. So yeah, they were very impactful programs.
Yeah, another reminder to students out there to get out there and look for more opportunities outside the classroom. You never
Yeah.
know, it might lead to your passion. To wrap up the webinar, I just want to give out a big, big, big thank you to Daric here for coming on and sharing your educational and career pathway on this webinar.
No, thank you for having me. It's been good to talk about it.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure. I also want to take this time to give a big thanks to everyone viewing. We hope you enjoyed this webinar, and make sure to check out our channel, the Energy Coalition, on Vimeo or YouTube, or our STEM Hero Library. Thanks for watching, everyone.